off your engine! Craig Herman says, Scotty, I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. My mom has a 2019 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk Elite. When in automotive drive, it seems to be making a clunking noise in between gears. It's only $41,000. Every dealer said, oh, they'll take it as a trade-in. They don't want to service it. Have you seen this before? Well, yes, I have. Unfortunately, since Fiat took over Chrysler owns Jeep, so now it's run by the Italians. It was bad enough when Chrysler ran themselves. They didn't want to follow up on problems they had. And with Fiat, it's even worse now. You want to go to an independent place first. It's under warranty, but take it to a guy like me to check it out, analyze it. Sometimes it's as simple as one of the joints is worn. You said it's your mother's. I'm assuming your mother doesn't take it off-road. She probably just drives it on the highway. Maybe a joint is wearing. Sometimes that happens. You never know. Often it's inside the transmission. And if it is, you want to take it into them for warranty. You're going to have to prove what it is. That's why you want a guy like me to check it out. I've got a video finding the source of car noises. I put the machine on different parts, and if I hear the noises coming directly from inside the transmission, I have that on. I would record it. I'd email the recording to the customer. They can show it to the dealer. Look, this is clunking in the transmission. It's got a problem. They often don't want to stand behind the thing, especially when it comes to noise. Oh, they either say, we don't hear it, or, oh, that's normal for those. Now, it might be normal because they're not all that well made. They often don't stand behind their stuff. And they fight tooth and nail to not have to fix things free that they should. Since the dealers only want you to trade it in another one, that shows all they want to do is make money. They have no interest in servicing. That's why you go to an independent guy like me to check it out and say, hey, yeah, it's a serious problem. There's something wrong here. Have this looked at. Now, I did it the other day with a guy in a Toyota. The Toyota dealer said, oh, Scotty's stuck in the 80s. He doesn't know these new engines make noise. Well, they shouldn't make the noise that this Toyota 4Runner was making. It sounded like it had marbles in the engine. They just say, oh, that's normal. It may be normal for that design because the design wasn't made right. When you find noise coming out of a vehicle, they should not make noise. Engines should not make rattling noises. Now, if they do on startup and go away, obviously a problem that's going to get worse over time. Could be the transmission starting to go out. You want it to be looked at for a guy like me first. You don't want them to just say, oh, there's nothing wrong, trade it in, blah, blah, blah. Because when it's out of warranty and the transmission does go out, guess what? They'll say, oh, yeah, we got to put another transmission in for $5,000. Don't think they're not going to do that. I've seen that happen over the years to a lot of my customers. Push it as hard as you can now. Find out where the noise is coming from. Make them fix it free if it's inside the transmission. And make sure you get video evidence of it. Because then if they're not going to and then later it does, you say, I showed you this 40,000 miles ago. You said it was nothing. That was baloney. And as time goes on, a lot of times they even end up recalling certain vehicles for bad transmissions. And then if you fix them in the past, then they have to pay for it. It gets very complex. But that's one reason I say don't buy one of those Jeeps in the first place, because their quality control is, and you're going to be stuck with a poor quality control vehicle if you keep it over any length of time. That's probably why they're telling you they want you to trade it in. Oh, it's in 2019. It's 2 years old. Time to trade it in, That's their idea. Well, in 2022, that all-electric Hummer's coming out. You know anything about cars? They call cars that are made in 2021, 2022 if they're made after the first few months. It's all kind of fake age they put on cars so they can get the newer ones out faster. Well, GM is going to try to control its own dealerships, because if you know anything about vehicles that come out like this that are popular, they always put these outrageous markups on them so they can make more profit for the dealerships. Well, GM is going to attempt to control the dealership from ripping off their own customers. It's not like these vehicles are being given away. The list price is $112,595. The reservations for the first run that they're making filled up in 10 minutes. We'll see what happens when they actually get them out. We'll see. Are the dealers really marking them up and saying, oh, well, yours didn't come in, but here's another one that costs more. Do you want it? I mean, all the companies have a tendency of doing that. When they come up with a new vehicle, they say, oh, we can make a profit on this and we'll mark it up as much as we can. We'll add on undercoating and all this other stuff that generally they have anyways. They just want to charge you more money for stuff. GM kind of knows that their own dealerships are greedy and they're trying to control them. GM says that they're going to limit the dealers' interactions with the Hummer buyers. So they made the reservations through GM, right? Not through the dealership. So GM is going to try to control it, not let the dealers stick their little hands in there and grab their profit. So it's not going to be like normal cars or so, where each dealership gets a bulk allotment of so many cars. So you can go and look and there'll be a row of Hummers. No, the people are ordering them and GM is going to fulfill the order. And they don't want the dealers to have much to do with it, because they don't want to get a bad image that they're really raking their customers over the coals, adding this on so they can make a profit. So they're getting more kind of like Tesla. The president of GM, Mark Roos, says this is to trim the waste from its dealership model, blending the benefits of established widespread dealership network with the trimmed-down process of online sales. So in other words, they want to bypass their own dealers because they don't trust them. That reminds me of something that happened in Houston ages ago. Saab dealerships, there were 2 of them in Houston at the time. And they were raking their customers over the coals, not fixing the Saabs right. And it got so bad that Saab came into Houston. They shut all the dealerships down, and they only reopened one, which was owned and run by the Saab company. Now, a few years later, Saab went bankrupt, and they didn't even exist anymore. But they knew that they had such a bad setup in their dealerships in Houston that they shut them both down, and they decided to run the dealership themselves. Well, maybe GM is headed that way. See that the dealers are raking everybody over, and they want to start doing direct sales. You know, the dealerships are going to be mad at that because they got all their money in infrastructure, and if the big money makers, GM's going to sell direct. It'll be interesting to see how this one pans out. Yes, what people are doing with their time with the coronavirus pandemic sometimes boggles the mind. Check out this lawnmower. This is an off-road lawnmower with 38-inch wheels that this guy built. James Davis has his off-road, calls it Bowser's, that flexes like mad. It's 4-wheel drive, but it's still a lawnmower. It's got a 3-speed sagging-out transmission. It's got a Toyota transfer case for the 4-wheel drive. And front and back axles, it kind of look like they came off of a Jeep. Now, the funny thing is, it's still got an 18 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine because it started out as a lawnmower. But that lawnmower wasn't designed for pulling 38-inch wheels, that's for sure. No lawnmower has wheels that big, but people have so much spare time on them. This guy has built this thing. And there's guys all over the country that are building crazy things like this. And he's made it so it can flex like mad. So it's a true off-road mower. Now, he's not saying if he's actually using it to do any off-road mowing. He's probably just riding around in the thing. You know, the world gets stranger and stranger as people have all this time on their hand. They don't know what they're doing, so he decided to put 38-inch wheels and all-wheel drive on his lawnmower. And yes, this is America, the land where people will pretty much do whatever they want when it comes to vehicles, especially off-road ones. Now, here's one to show you the patent absurdity of how Mercedes sometimes makes their vehicles. I was working on a Sprinter van a few months ago. The alternator wasn't charging. The guy had changed the alternator, but it still didn't charge. So he was lost. Well, I know a lot of people. I asked guys around that I know that work on nothing but Mercedes. And he said, Scotty, you'd never find that in 1,000 years. It turns out that for the alternator, there is a 300 amp fuse. It is built into the cable and the wiring harness under the oil pan of the engine. Hidden way down there. And to top it all off, it's completely covered up with that weather resistance tape sealed in like a wiring harness is. You can't see it. It's hidden away under the vehicle. So, I mean, if you hit something down the bottom, it could knock a hole in it and make it go out. But you can't even see it. Now, why on God's green earth did Mercedes-Benz decide to put a fuse in a part of a wiring harness under the oil pan of the engine? Fuse boxes, they're called fuse boxes for a reason. They're a box that have the fuses in it. Why on earth are these morons putting fuses on a giant cable under the oil pan where no one would ever think of looking? Now, of course, if you worked on them all the time, you'd probably find that out pretty quick. And since I know guys who did, I found it pretty fast. But I told the guy, I said, look, here's what this is now for future reference. And the kicker was, the part wasn't even available through Mercedes-Benz anymore. So I had to go aftermarket and buy a 300 amp aftermarket assembly and rewire it in and then seal it in. And rather than put it in the moronic position where they did under the engine, I tapped the wire in there and I put the fuse on the top so you could access it when you opened the hood, which is how they should have built in the first place. But then again, there's the Germans for you. They just do something because they can, and I guess they have a wicked sense of humor and figured, no one's ever going to find out where this thing is, so they'll have to take it back to us and we'll charge them a fortune to fix. If you ever run into a Sprinter van, the alternator doesn't charge, check that fuse first under the oil pan in the wiring harness. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.